Playing with Power MTG. Powerful cards, powerful formats. Have you heard that the flavored air category is quickly becoming the leading alternative to vaping and smoking? It's a whole new movement towards better habits, led by the sponsor of today's video, Fume. Flavored air helps people stop bad habits, and Fume leads the charge with its award-winning flavored air device. Fume is not a vape. It contains no nicotine, no batteries, is non-toxic, and has no vapor, meaning you can use it anywhere. Fume allows you to draw flavor into your mouth and helps you fill the void when ditching your bad habits. It's made from high-quality material and is made to fidget with. It lets you do something with your hands with its magnets, snaps, and clicks. Fume has lots of delicious flavors to choose from, including spearmint ice, raspberry lemon, and orange vanilla. Fume also continuously invests in third-party studies to ensure the safety of their products and is backed by doctors in the US. Fume has served over 300,000 customers, and you can be the next success story. For a limited time, use my code PWPMTG to get your free topper. It's the perfect accessory to your Fume device. Slip it into the mouthpiece for a softer, warmer feel. It's chewable for those who love to fidget, and it's reusable. Head to tryfume.com, that's tryfum.com, and use code PWPMTG or scan the QR code on screen to get your free Fume topper when you order your journey pack today. A big thanks to Fume for sponsoring today's video. Now, let's start out by showcasing our fighters this evening. First, we have Sasha piloting the partner pair of Rograkh, son of Rograkh, and Silas Wren, Seeker Adept. This deck seeks to go as fast as possible with ramp, rituals, and tutors. It then uses Ad Nauseam or Necropotence to draw a bunch of cards to help win with Thassa's Oracle or Underworld Breach. Next, we have Corey piloting the partner pair of Tymna the Weaver and Kraum, Ludovic's Opus. This deck is similar to Sasha's, except it swings more into mid-range playstyles. It establishes a board presence, gets many draw engines online, then closes it out with Oracle or Breach. After that, we have Ian piloting Glarb, Calamity's Augur. This is a Doomsday deck that attempts to assemble a perfect 5-card deck by casting its namesake card. It then uses its commander to crack the pile and win with Thassa's Oracle. Finally, we have Ryan piloting Nixilis, Captive Kingpin. This is a manual storm deck seeking to gain card advantage through its commander. It then pings opponents over and over, getting more cards, and closes out the game with commander damage as a backup. Without further ado, let's kick off this rough, rocking, robust rodeo. Sasha won the branded hashtag challenge and gets to start us off. Sasha draws a card for turn and plays a command tower. She casts a Mox Amber. She casts her commander, Rograkh, son of Rograkh. She casts Wishclaw Talisman. She passes. Corey draws and plays a Flooded Strand. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a volcanic island onto the battlefield. He casts Mystic Remora and passes. Ian draws and plays a Watery Grave into play untapped, paying 2 life. He casts Deathrite Shaman and ends his turn. Ryan draws and plays a Badlands. He casts a Soul Ring. Remora triggers and Corey draws. Ryan ships the turn. Sasha draws, takes no actions, and passes. During his upkeep, Corey pays to keep his Remora. He draws, takes no actions, and passes, discarding to hand size. Ian draws and plays a Boseiju who endures as his land for turn. He casts Elves of Deep Shadow. He activates Deathrite Shaman, exiling a land from Corey's graveyard to help cast Polywog Prodigy. Ian ends his turn. Ryan draws and plays a Wooded Foothills. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Blood Crypt onto the battlefield untapped, paying 2 life. He casts his commander, Nixilis, Captive Kingpin. Ryan gives the turn to Sasha. Sasha draws and casts Rite of Flame. Remora triggers and Corey draws a card. Then Sasha adds 2 red. She casts Rhystic Study. In response, Ian casts Force of Negation for its alternate cost, exiling a blue card. Remora triggers and Corey draws again. Rhystic is countered and exiled, and Sasha passes to Corey. During his upkeep, Corey lets his Remora die. He draws and casts Rite of Flame, adding 3 red due to Sasha's Rite of Flame in her graveyard. He casts a Soul Ring. He casts Dockside Extortionist. It enters, and Corey creates 3 treasures. He dashes in Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer. He moves to combat and attacks Sasha with Ragavan. She takes it, Ragavan triggers, Corey creates a treasure, and Sasha exiles a Demonic Tutor off of the top of her library. In his second main phase, Corey casts Demonic Tutor from exile, fetching up a card into his hand. He casts Mox Opal. Polywog Prodigy triggers, and Ian draws a card. He casts Esper Sentinel. Finished up, Corey passes. Ian draws and taps Elves of Deep Shadow, adding a black. Nixilis triggers, gets a +1/+1 counter, and Ryan exiles a command tower off of the top of his library. Ian casts his commander, Glarb, Calamity's Augur. It resolves, Polywog triggers, and gets a +1/+1 counter. Ian moves to combat and attacks Sasha with Polywog. Sasha takes 2, and Ian passes to Ryan. Ryan draws and plays a command tower from exile as his land for turn. He casts Cataract Parasite. In response, Ian pays 2 life to cycle Street Wraith. In response, Ryan flashes in an Orcish Bowmasters. It enters, pings Ian for 1, and Ryan amasses Orcs 1. Nixilis triggers, gets a counter, and Ryan exiles a Skirk Prospector. Then Ian draws from Street Wraith, Bowmasters triggers, pings Sasha for 1, Ryan amasses 1, then Nixilis triggers again. It gets a counter, then Ryan exiles a Dark Ritual. Next, Ryan casts Chrome Mox. Esper and Polywog trigger, Ian draws, then Mowmasters and Cataract Parasite trigger. Ian takes 1, Nixilis triggers, gets a counter, then Ryan exiles a Dockside Extortionist. Then Ryan pings Ian for 1 again, amasses Orcs 1, Nixilis triggers, gets a counter, and Ryan exiles a Mox Opal. Then Corey draws from Esper Sentinel, and Bowmasters and Parasite trigger again. Corey takes 1, Nixilis gets a counter, Ryan exiles Final Fortune, then Ryan pings Corey for 1, amasses 1, Nixilis gets another counter, and Ryan exiles Simeon Spirit Guide. Then Kraum Mox resolves, and Ryan imprints a Fire Covenant. Next, Ryan casts Mox Opal from exile. Polywog triggers, Ian draws, Cataract and Orcish Bowmasters deal 1 each to Ian, Ryan amasses, Nixilis gets 2 counters, and Ryan exiles Opposition Agent and exiles a Mox Amber. Ryan casts Mox Amber from exile. Polywog triggers, Ian draws, takes 2 from Cataract and Bowmasters, Ryan amasses 1, Nixilis gets 2 counters, then Ryan exiles a Diabolic Intent and a Tybalt's Trickery. Ryan casts Dark Ritual from exile. Ian draws from Polywog, takes 2 from Cataract and Bowmasters, Ryan amasses 1, Nixilis gets 2 counters, then Ryan exiles Jessica's Will and Barbarian Ring. Then Ryan adds 3 black. He casts Dockside Extortionist. It enters and Ryan creates 6 treasures. He casts Imperial Recruiter. In response, Ian activates Deathrite Shaman, exiling a land from Ryan's graveyard, adding a black. He casts Dark Ritual. Esper triggers, Corey draws, Cataract and Bowmasters trigger, Corey takes 2, Ryan amasses 1, Nixilis gets 2 counters, and Ryan exiles Coruscation Mage and Prosper Tomebound. Then Ian adds 3 black. He flashes in an Opposition Agent. In response, Ryan casts Tybalt's Trickery from exile. Agent is countered, Ian mills 3 cards, then exiles a Time Twister. Staring down Cataract Parasite and Orcish Bowmasters, Ian decides not to cast it, putting them all on bottom. Then Recruiter resolves. It triggers, and Ryan fetches up a Walking Ballista into his hand. Ryan casts Agatha's Soul Cauldron. He casts Walking Ballista where X equals 0. In response, Corey casts Strict Serenade. This is when Corey realized he probably should have countered Soul Cauldron instead. So Walking Ballista is countered, and Ryan creates a 2/2 bird. Ryan activates Soul Cauldron, exiling Walking Ballista from his graveyard. He activates Walking Ballista's ability on Nixilis due to Agatha's Soul Cauldron, pinging Corey for 1. Nixilis gets a counter, and Ryan exiles from the top of his library. Ryan presents a loop of removing a counter, pinging an opponent, and getting the counter back from Nixilis' ability. He does this over and over, until the table is dead, and Ryan wins the game. Corey draws and plays a Command Tower. He casts a Jewel Lotus. He casts a Soul Ring. Corey passes. Ian draws and plays a Bloodstained Mire. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up an Underground Sea onto the battlefield. He casts Imperial Seal. He fetches up a card onto the top of his library and loses 2 life. Ian passes. Ryan draws and also plays a Bloodstained Mire. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Badlands onto the battlefield. He casts Strike It Rich, creating a treasure. Ryan ends his turn. Sasha draws and plays a Verdant Catacombs. She cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up an Underground Sea onto the battlefield. She casts Dark Ritual, adding 3 black. She casts Necropotence. In response, Ian casts Force of Will, paying a life and exiling a blue card, countering Necropotence. Sasha casts a Mana Crypt. She casts her commander, Rograkh. Sasha gives the turn to Corey. Corey draws and plays a Flooded Strand. He casts his commander, Kraum, Ludovic's Opus. He cracks his Flooded Strand, pays a life, and fetches up an Underground Sea onto the battlefield. He casts Mystic Remora. Corey passes to Ian. Ian draws and plays a Bayou. He casts Kraum Mox. Remora triggers and Corey draws. It resolves and Ian imprints a Swan Song. He casts his commander, Glarb. Kraum triggers and Corey draws again. Glarb resolves and Ian passes the turn. Ryan draws and casts Dark Ritual. Remora triggers and Corey draws a card. Then Ryan adds 3 black. He casts his commander, Nixilis. Kraum triggers and Corey draws again. Ryan ends his turn. During her upkeep, Sasha wins her Mana Crypt roll. She draws and plays a Misty Rainforest. She cracks it and pays a life. Nixilis triggers, gets a counter, and Ryan exiles a Mayhem Devil. Then Sasha fetches up a Volcanic Island onto the battlefield. She casts Wishclaw Talisman. Remora triggers and Corey draws. She activates Wishclaw, fetching up a card into her hand and giving Wishclaw to Ian. Sasha passes. During his upkeep, Corey lets his Remora die. He draws and plays a City of Brass. He casts Cabal Ritual, adding 3 black. He casts Necropotence. He taps City of Brass, taking the damage. Nixilis triggers, gets a counter, and Ryan exiles a Cabal Ritual. Corey casts Valley Flood Caller. Next, Corey activates Necropotence 30 times, paying 30 life, exiling 30 cards. Nixilis triggers 30 times, gets 30 counters, and Ryan exiles 30 cards. Corey moves to his instep and puts the Necro cards into his hand. In the instep, Corey flashes in a Mana Crypt through Valley Flood Caller. He casts a Kraum Mox, imprinting Pyroblast. He casts Rite of Flame, adding 2 red. He casts a Mana Vault. He casts Final Fortune, getting an extra turn. He casts Talisman of Dominance. He casts Talisman of Progress. Corey discards the hand size, exiling the discarded cards, moving to his next turn. During its upkeep, Corey wins his mana crypt roll. He skips his draw step due to Necropotence. In his main phase, he casts Gamble. He fetches up a card into his hand and then randomly discards a Savine's Reclamation, exiling it through Necropotence. Corey taps his Talisman for blue, taking a damage. Ob Nixilis triggers, gets a counter, and Ryan exiles an Orcish Bowmasters. Corey casts Mystical Tutor, fetching up a Demonic Consultation onto the top of his library. He casts Dockside Extortionist. It enters and Corey creates 3 treasures. He taps his other Talisman for white, taking a damage. Ob Nixilis triggers, gets a counter, and Ryan exiles a card. Corey casts his commander, Tymna the Weaver. He moves to Krombat and attacks Sasha with Kraum. Sasha takes it, and in his second main phase, Corey pays a life and draws a card through Tymna. Ob Nixilis triggers, gets a counter, and Ryan exiles another card. Corey taps his City of Brass, taking a damage. Ob triggers, gets a counter, and Ryan exiles a card. Corey casts Tainted Pact. He exiles from the top of his library until he reveals a Thassa's Oracle, putting it into his hand. He casts Thassa's Oracle. It enters, and since his library was almost entirely exiled with Tainted Pact, Corey wins the game. In this game, Ian switches to Talion, the Kindly Lord. This deck seeks to control the table with light stacks, slowing down the game. It then whittles away opponents' life totals through its commander and cards like Bloodchief's Ascension, and Ian gets to start us off. Ian draws and plays a Takenuma Abandoned Mire for turn. He casts a Jeweled Lotus. He cracks it to help cast his commander, Talion the Kindly Lord. Talion enters and Ian names 2. He passes. Ryan draws and plays a Swamp. He casts a Soul Ring and ends his turn. Sasha draws and plays a Flooded Strand. She cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Volcanic Island onto the battlefield. She casts Gamble. She fetches up a card into her hand and then randomly discards a Wishclaw Talisman. She casts a Mana Crypt. She casts a Mox Opal. She casts her commander, Rograkh, son of Rograkh. All through, she passes the turn. Corey draws and plays a Blood Crypt, into play untapped, paying 2 life. He ends his turn. Ian draws and casts a Soul Ring. He ships the turn to Ryan. Ryan draws and plays a Wooded Foothills. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Badlands onto the battlefield. He casts his commander, Ob Nixilis, Captive Kingpin. He gives the turn to Sasha. During her upkeep, Sasha wins her Mana Crypt roll. She draws and casts a Talisman of Creativity. Talion triggers, Sasha loses 2 life, and Ian draws a card. She casts Vampiric Tutor. She fetches up a card onto the top of her library and loses 2 life. She passes. At the end of Sasha's turn, Corey casts a Vampiric Tutor. In response, Sasha casts a Swan Song. Corey is shocked as Swan Song counters Vampiric Tutor, and he creates a 2/2 bird. The turn moves to Corey. Corey draws and plays an Ancient Tomb. He taps it to help cast Talisman of Dominance. Talion triggers, Corey loses 2 life, and Ian draws a card. He casts a Mana Vault. Corey passes. Ian draws and casts Spellskite. He misses his land drop and passes, discarding to hand size. Ryan draws and casts a Lotus Petal. He casts a Lion's Eye Diamond. He casts Grape Shot, with each copy targeting his opponents. Talion triggers, Ryan loses 2 life, and Ian draws. In response, Ian pays 2 life to activate Spellskite, redirecting Grape Shot to Spellskite itself. Then Corey and Sasha take 1, and Ob Nixilis triggers twice. Ob gets a counter, and Ryan exiles a Vampiric Tutor. With the Ob Nixilis trigger still in the stack, Ryan casts Vampiric Tutor from exile. In response, Ian pays 2 life to cast Mental Misstep, countering Tutor. Then Ob Nixilis gets another counter, and Ryan exiles a Coruscation Mage. He moves to combat and attacks Sasha with Ob Nixilis. She takes 6, and in his second main phase, Ryan casts Grinding Station. He ships the turn. During her upkeep, Sasha wins her Mana Crypt roll. She draws and casts Rhystic Study. In response, Ian casts Force of Negation for its alternate cost, exiling a blue card, countering, and exiling Rhystic. Sasha passes. Corey draws and plays a Command Tower. He casts his commander, Kraum, Ludovic's Opus. He moves to Krombat and attacks Sasha with Kraum and his bird. She takes it, and Corey gives the turn to Ian. Ian draws and sinks his head as he missed his land drop again. He casts Weathered Runestone. He moves to combat and attacks Corey with Talion. Corey takes it, and Ian passes. Ryan draws and casts a Mox Amber. He moves to combat and attacks Ian with Ob Nixilis. Ian takes it, and Ryan passes. During her upkeep, Sasha loses her Mana Crypt roll and takes 3 damage. She draws and casts Springleaf Drum. She casts her other commander, Silas Wren, Seeker Adept. Kraum and Talion trigger, Sasha loses 2, Ian draws, then Corey draws from Kraum. Sasha ends her turn. During his draw step, Corey takes a damage from his Mana Ball. Ob Nixilis triggers, gets a counter, and Ryan exiles a Mana Confluence. In his main phase, he plays a Spire of Industry. He casts Mox Opal. He casts his other commander, Tymna the Weaver. He moves to combat and attacks Sasha with Kraum and Ryan with his bird. They both take it, and in his second main phase, Corey pays 2 life and draws 2 cards through Tymna. He casts a Lotus Petal. Corey passes. Ian draws and plays an Ottawara, Soaring City as his land for turn. He casts Bloodchief's Ascension. He moves to combat and attacks Ryan with Talion. Ryan takes it, Ian moves to his end step, puts a counter onto Bloodchief's Ascension, and passes the turn. Ryan draws and plays a Mana Confluence from exile as his land for turn. He casts Red Elemental Blast, targeting Talion. In response, Ian casts Misdirection for its alternate cost, exiling a blue card. It resolves, and Ian redirects Red Blast to Kraum. Kraum is destroyed, and Ryan follows up by casting Deadly Rollick for its alternate cost, targeting Talion. In response, Ian pays 2 life to activate Spellskite, redirecting Rollick to Spellskite itself. Spellskite is exiled, and Ryan taps his Mana Confluence to help cast Wheel of Fortune. In response, Corey casts Snap, targeting Ob Nixilis. Talion triggers, Corey loses 2, and Ian draws a card. Then Ob Nixilis is bounced, and Corey untaps 2 lands. Still in response, Corey casts Mystical Tutor. In response, Ian casts Force of Will, paying a life and exiling a blue card, countering Tutor. With wheel still in the stack, Ryan cracks his LED, discards his hand, and adds 3 red. Then each player discards their hand and draws 7. Next, Ryan casts Disciple of the Vault. He casts Skirk Prospector. Ryan passes. At the end of Ryan's turn, Sasha casts Chain of Vapor targeting Talion. Talion bounces, and the turn moves to Sasha. During her upkeep, Sasha wins her Mana Crypt roll. She draws and plays a Scalding Tarn. She cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Badlands onto the battlefield. She casts Grim Monolith. She casts Grim Tutor. She holds priority and casts Flare of Duplication for its alternate cost, sacrificing Rograkh as an additional cost. Then Grim Tutor is copied. Tutor resolves, Sasha fetches up a card into her hand and loses 3 life. Then she fetches up another card into her hand and loses another 3 life. Sasha casts Dockside Extortionist, then enters and she creates 6 treasures. She cracks a treasure for a black. Disciple of the Vault triggers and Sasha loses a life. She casts Tainted Pact. She exiles her entire library, putting the last card into her hand. She cracks another treasure, losing 1 from Disciple to help cast Thassa's Oracle. Oracle enters, and Sasha wins the game. Ladies and gentlemen, what a great set of matches tonight. Congrats to Ryan, Corey, and Sasha on their wins. No game tonight made it past turn 5. Games 1 and 2 only went to turn 3. The format keeps getting faster and faster, to the point where it's getting harder and harder for other decks and strategies to break into the format. Right now, the challenge lies in the fact that a new strategy or emerging commander needs to be able to be as fast or able to interact as fast as decks are today. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, and it is just the nature of mature formats. That's not to say we don't appreciate when new strategies are tested, like Ian did tonight. The most valuable card in tonight's first game, sponsored by Luxury Playstyle, goes to Nixilis. This commander allowed Ryan to gain massive card advantage, pose a serious threat, and was even used in the winning combo. The most valuable card in Game 2 goes to Valley Floodcaller. After a massive Necropotence, Corey had one chance to be able to win since Ryan had also exiled so many cards. Valley allowed Corey to dump a lot of rocks into the table, giving him enough mana to be able to win on his next turn. And the most valuable card in Game 3 goes to Flare of Duplication. This card allowed Sasha to double tutor. The ability to cast this card as soon as turn 1 with Rograkh as your commander is very powerful. Sasha showed its power by being able to sacrifice her commander instead of paying its mana cost to help get the final card she needed to close out the game. A big thanks again to Fume for sponsoring today's video. Check out the link in the description to find out more. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Tune in next time and we duke it out to see who will be king of the competitive EDH table. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.